I sat through the whole thing. This was really bad. It was extremely leftist on every political dimension. Racial politics, sexual politics, class politics, regime politics. Its narrative was cowardly. It was just awful.
After remaking the movie, they just got rid of the dwarfs. But they have one token dwarf amongst these magical creatures. You actually just went backwards. You actually just erased the dwarfism side of it. The disability, like we're a disability group, you just erase that whole...
This is just so typical of the left. The progressive always finding a way to find their way back to doing something not progressive.
Have they ever thought about maybe like a little bit of like, I don't know, vulnerability study, opposition research, that sort of thing, before you go and hire some Zoomer who's a lunatic?
However, here's the thing. Your attitude will get you tossed out the door, even if your talent gets you in. What began as a fairy tale ascent has now fully unraveled into one of Hollywood's most turbulent collapses in recent memory. Insiders are painting a much darker picture of Zegler, one behind the glitz and red carpets. One that is replete with egotism and a trail of animosity left on every set she has touched.
Controversy in Snow White. The dwarves have been eliminated in the live action.
Yeah.
Now it's Snow White and the 7 magical beings.
Wait, it's 7 and the magical beings?
Yeah,
They won't even say and the 7 dwarves?
No, because they're not dwarves. For right now, that's the only jobs that are there.
Doing catastrophically. They spent $300 million and it currently has a 2.2 out of 10 rating on IMDb.
The movie has a major identity crisis.
Rachel Zegler, like so many kids raised on TikTok, she's all for infertata is the only global solution.
There are now rumors that Spielberg, who gave her that first big shot, was so annoyed by her actions on West Side Story that he promised in private never to collaborate with her ever again. Disney's Snow White didn't simply fail when it felt like things couldn't get any worse. It caused such a huge loss at the box office that the studio apparently had to put other projects on hold. Rachel Zegler, the same actress who was able to alienate not only audiences, was at the center of it all.
Last week was a very big week, objectively a huge week. We had quite a few announcements. It's the first live-action film, which is Snow White and the Evil Queen. And that's me, I'm Snow White, which is so funny.
No one on the right side of America can stand the star of this movie. She came out and she said, I apologize. Like, I went too far, but it wasn't.
However, rumor has it that her own co-stars, crew, and even studio executives, this is the account of how one of the greatest directors of all time may have been the first to raise the alarm when Rachel Zegler's Hollywood fantasy evolved into a full-fledged nightmare. Let's begin where the supposed fallout started.
It's got extra musical numbers that are incredibly unnecessary that really add to that runtime. And let me go ahead and let you know that they're absolutely f***ing atrocious.
Who wants a movie about true love? What kind of woman do we want out there seeking true love, Eliana? It's the outrage.
Queen, playing the evil queen. It was pretty amazing.
They say all you have to do to make your wish come true is let it echo, 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 echo.
On the West Side Story set, getting a Spielberg project is the ultimate goal for most performers. It's an opportunity to study under a master and prove oneself to the world. However, other rumors circulating within the production claim that Zegler didn't quite go about it that way.
It's awful, generic. Never mind that the lyrics make no sense at all. All you have to do to make your dream come true is let it echo. Is it like on a metaphor?
And you know the saying, go woke, get broke, and Disney's going to lose money on this movie. And I believe it only made less than $1 million.
They spent $170 million to make the thing, and it had the lowest opening, under $50 million, of any of these live-action Disney remakes that they've ever had.
Broke out with this news, and I'm very, very, very excited and looking forward.
According to people familiar with the movie, Zegler immediately established a reputation for being challenging to collaborate with, particularly when it came to following instructions. According to reports, Spielberg had a distinct idea about how Maria should be portrayed. Classic felt authentic to the original's essence, but Zegler wouldn't have it. She supposedly strongly objected to the idea of reinterpreting Maria from a contemporary perspective.
Hardcore.
They're petrified of some kind of backlash.
Now, I'm guessing that she's not married. I'm guessing that she doesn't have kids. The movie is a complete disaster, by the way.
Rachel Zegler is extraordinarily woke, but she's woke in a way that's quite deranged.
So apparently, according to them and according to the writers of Snow White, women can't even want to be in love anymore.
Claiming that the position has to represent modern concepts of autonomy and empowerment. Now, criticizing a filmmaker isn't always a terrible thing, but it takes courage to take on Spielberg on his own movie. Additionally, insiders claim that it wasn't well received. Some crew members characterized the set as uncomfortable and tiresome due to the back and forth becoming so disruptive. Spielberg is renowned for his composed manner.
So she comes off as an insufferable, whiny brat.
Pretending like Rachel Zegler is the first of them all when she looks like Lord Farquaad in the film.
There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her. Weird.
Part of the first, fairy tale ever told.
Disney deleted Someday My Prince Will Come and made a modernized feminist alternative.
Oh my God.
Was reportedly noticeably agitated at a number of crucial rehearsals. While Spielberg remained professional in public, praising the cast and crew during press tours, those close to the production suggest that he was already done with Zegler behind the scenes. One source even claimed that Spielberg privately confided to colleagues that working with Zegler was one of the most frustrating experiences of his career. However, the conflict on West Side Story was only the start. The actual catastrophe was yet to occur. If the onset turbulence wasn't enough, Zegler's choice to play Maria caused a whole other uproar. Although many applauded the selection of a Latina actress playing the legendary part, inquiries concerning Zegler's true ethnicity quickly began to surface. Some studio execs reportedly pushed her to confirm her Latina identification throughout the casting process, since they weren't entirely convinced by her assertions about her background. Hollywood has a long history of handling representation poorly, let's face it, but the way this whole thing transpired behind closed doors was particularly ugly. According to insiders, there was significant friction between Zegler and the studio as a result of continuous efforts for her to verify her past. During interviews, Zegler allegedly doubled down, turning the dispute into a public spectacle, accusing the studio of questioning her identity. There were allegedly heated discussions about whether her casting would be seen as authentic, or as just another instance of Hollywood playing fast and loose with ethnic representation. Regardless of the veracity of those charges, the outcome was the same: more drama, more headlines, and even more people observing her every move. Even if the first chapter of Zegler's career was difficult, the implosion of the reel was still imminent. By the time West Side Story was released, the background noise had nearly overtaken the picture. Zegler's redemption story was intended to be her opportunity to get past the drama of the West Side Story and establish herself as a true A-list actress when Disney chose her to spearhead their Snow White revival. Rather, it turned into her career's greatest catastrophe. The statistics speak for themselves. Snow White needed to be a huge hit in order to break even on its extravagant budget, which was reported to be between $240 and $270 million. But the film miserably fell short of expectations, barely making over $198 million worldwide. Additionally, the majority of people weren't buying Disney's attempt to reframe the story by blaming changing audience preferences and market factors. Zegler was singled out by industry insiders, and to be honest, it's difficult to dispute them. Zegler had already ruined the movie before it had even been released in theaters. It was like adding gasoline to a fire when she made the now famous remarks that the original Snow White was eerie and antiquated. Her criticisms of the tale weren't the only things that generated issues. Fans who grew up enjoying the 1937 classic weren't simply turned off. They were incensed. Zegler appeared totally out of touch with the audience. She was meant to be winning over with her patronizing demeanor during press junkets, when she ridiculed the original plot and scoffed off the notion of romance and fairy tales. Every new Zegler comment served as another nail in the coffin, rather than creating excitement. As if the public outcry wasn't enough, There were also rumors that Disney executives were unaware of how poorly the movie was doing. According to some sources, internal discussions about whether Zegler was the best person to direct the studio's next generation of princess films were taking place long before the movie came out. As it turns out, she wasn't, but Snow White's negative effects extended beyond its low box office performance. It affected every aspect of Disney's live-action pipeline, and the industry was rocked by what transpired next. When starring in a remake of a well-loved classic, one thing you should never do is disparage the original, but Rachel Zegler repeatedly did just that. Zegler couldn't help herself in several interviews prior to the publication of Snow White. She criticized the notion of a prince saving the princess and sneered at the plot line as though it were beneath her, rather than embracing the romance and nostalgia that made the 1937 movie classic. One comment in particular became the catchphrase for irate Disney fans worldwide. She is neither going to dream of real love, nor will she be saved by the prince. Although it was meant to be empowering, many fans found it to be haughty. Let's face it, nobody showed up for Snow White expecting a feminism lecture. When they arrived for the fairy tale they adored, they were met with an actress who publicly disregarded the job she was employed to oversee. Memes became viral on social media. YouTube reviewers went completely crazy, and TikTok was not far behind, with producers amassing millions of views analyzing every patronizing utterance said by Zegler. The worst aspect of the response was that she didn't back down. Instead of apologizing, she appeared to embrace the drama and smile smugly during the interviews, as though she were somehow immune to the criticism. The damage was already done by the time the film was released in theaters. Before the first weekend had even ended, audiences had turned against her and Snow White was already being called a failure. And that term stayed, as we are all aware now. However, if you believe that this was merely a case of poor public relations, prepare ready for even more chaos behind the scenes. Zegler's off-camera drama turned the movie set into a political tension powder keg, as if destroying the original Snow White wasn't enough. There were rumors that the set was split up. The studio publicly attempted to maintain composure, but some crew members reportedly felt caught in the crossfire, as off-camera exchanges heated up whenever politics entered the room. During interviews, they made every effort to keep the cast apart, carefully planning joint appearances and preventing any possibility of the two leading ladies losing their cool. However, behind the scenes, rumors circulated that tensions became so high that some scenes had to be res hot or skipped entirely to maintain harmony. Marketing teams were reportedly frantically trying to figure out how to market the movie without allowing the political rift to ruin the press tour. Furthermore, the press continued to cover it. Long before the film even came released, headlines about the chilly relationship between Zegler and Ghetto began to appear. It was simply another catastrophe on top of a production that was already in disarray. But Snow White wouldn't be the only victim. It would ultimately rock Disney to its foundation. Rachel Zegler had the entire world at her feet when she entered Hollywood. Spielberg behind her, Disney unveiling a golden career path on the red carpet. Nevertheless, we are currently witnessing one of the most rapid collapses in recent history. The infamous Snow White press trip, the purported arguments with Spielberg, and the ugliness of the political conflicts that erupted behind the scenes. Dream prospects have been transformed into cautionary tales by Zegler. The largest game studios entrusted her with their most valuable intellectual properties, yet she betrayed the projects and the supporters who were meant to support her. This is the lesson. No matter how many accolades you've received or how many standing ovations you've had, Hollywood doesn't give you second chances just because you're great. Once you sour relations with the people who pay your salaries and the ticket buyers, you're done. There is more to Rachel Zegler's tale than one unsuccessful film. It's about what happens when ego triumphs over thankfulness, when controversy eclipses skill, and when the show's headliner forgets that the audience always has the last word. Additionally, the crowd has now departed the